Do we have any requests for bill introductions? Recognize Jason Watkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jason Watkins, Watkins Public Strategies, here today representing the American Heart Association. Bill request, it's 21 RS 1273, and that bill relates to an increase in the tobacco tax and a lowering of the food sales tax.
Thank you. Committee, any questions? Is that a question? Any objection to the into the request? Did you have a question? Seeing none, the request is approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And committee, I apologize. I'm still trying to join online here. Are there any other requests for introductions? See, Representative Stogstill, did you have a request?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I do. I would like to introduce RS 1358. It has to do with continuing school districts' ability to levy an ad valorem tax. It basically just extends that from the 2019-2020 school years to the 21-22 school years.
Thank you. Committee, any questions? Representative Stogstill, is that scheduled to sunset?
It must be, because the only changes that I see in this bill are year changes from, again, 2019, 2020 to 2021, 2022.
Okay. Committee, any further questions? Seeing none, is there any objection to the request? Seeing none, the request is approved. Are there any further bill introductions? Seeing none in the room and none online, we will move on to our first item of business for the day, is a hearing on House Bill 2313. I will officially open the hearing and look to the revisor's office for a brief overview.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 2313 would allow for the Kansas National Guard and reservist members who are in good standing to qualify for the property tax exemption that it currently exists in statute. That would provide an exemption of property tax for up to 2 motor vehicles. Currently, these individuals in the Kansas National Guard and the reservists are not eligible for the property tax exemption. And with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you. Committee, any questions? Representative Sanders.
Who does the, thank you, Mr. Chairman, who does the exemption apply to now?
Yes, and some of the proponents can probably answer this better than I can. This bill did come out of military, the Veterans Military Committee. It applies to the full-time members, generally of the United States military. And then there's some, how it's drafted, or how the language currently exists for the Air and National Guard. This bill's been around a few years. I know from my recollection, it has to deal with they're exempt from current language because they don't fit under the authority of Title 10 of Title 32 of the U.S. Code. And how they're assigned in Kansas is, I believe, one of the disqualifiers of why these individuals do not currently qualify for the exemption. But essentially, the basic answer is currently it's full-time members of the military service are the ones who currently qualify.
Thank you.
Any further questions for the revisor? If not, I apologize, Adam. I hadn't thoroughly read through this. Is this an exemption or is it a refund that is remitted to the individual?
I believe it's an exemption, but I believe if they paid it, they can get a refund after a certain point.
Okay, that's where my confusion was, because I noticed in Section D it discussed a refund, but I was under the impression it was an exemption. So, thank you. Any further questions, committee? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Siebers, for your overview, and I would turn to Department of Revenue if they'd wish to discuss the fiscal note on this item.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, this is Kathleen Smith with the Kansas Department of Revenue. Passage of House Bill 2313 would decrease the revenues to the two building funds, the Educational Building Fund and the State Institutions Building Fund, by approximately $27,000 for the total of the two. We worked with the Kansas Army National Guard to determine the number of additional military members that would qualify for this, and they came up with around 5,685 additional individuals that would qualify. If they were able to do two vehicles, I think the bill provides for two vehicles for each individual. That would be around 11,370 vehicles. So that's how we came up with our estimate of around $27,288 to the two building funds. With that, Mr. Chairman, I would stand for questions.
Thank you. Committee, any questions on the fiscal note? Seeing none, thank you for that overview, and we will open up proponent testimony. And I would look to Eugene Bradley, Legislative Liaison, Enlisted Association of National Guard of Kansas. Welcome to committee. I don't believe your mic is on.
There you go. I've watched enough of these on YouTube. I should know that. Thank you all for having me. I believe this is the first time in 3 years we've been able to get this bill to actually a hearing. So it's nice to actually be heard and have a chance to put this out in front of everybody. I think every representative I've talked to about this bill says this is a very common sense item, but a lot of times common sense doesn't necessarily win out. That being said, as the revisor stated, Kansas Statute 795107 excludes most of the members of the Kansas Army and Air National Guard, to the tune of, as he pointed out, as the Department of Revenue pointed out, out of the 6,400 guardsmen that serve in the state of Kansas, fewer than 1,000 are actually able to take advantage of this tax exemption. I'm one of the fortunate few that are on the correct set of orders and type of activation that I can take advantage of this for me and my family, but there are a lot of Guards members that could use the relief, and they're not able to because of the type of orders they are on during the time of vehicle registration. The National Guard of Kansas is always here to serve the state of Kansas, and that's unique to the National Guard. I don't need to stand up here and tell all of you about the mission of the state of Kansas National Guard, Air and Army National Guard. All of you have seen us at work, whether it's the activation that we just went through to Washington, D.C., which was the largest short notice troop movement that the state has put together since the Gulf War, or whether it's our response to the Linwood tornado in 2019 and all the flooding that we had throughout the region. In 2020, we had Guardsmen activated and responding in every single state, every single county of the state. This is we are a widespread Guard, and we are active and able to help the state at a moment's notice. There's a movement going through D.C. currently to adapt the benefit structure of the Department of Defense to ensure that a day in a uniform is a day in uniform. And that fact means that the state of Kansas continue its tradition of leaning forward and protecting its guardsmen and providing the benefits that the military has earned. This bill affects less than 0.4% of existing vehicle registrations. I believe the Department of Revenue could correct me, but I believe we're at somewhere around 2 million vehicle registrations total, and we are looking at a total, as she pointed out, 11,000. This isn't a benefit. I know one of the fears I've heard is that this is a benefit that is going to hamper a lot of our rural counties that house the military. The fact of the matter is most of the National Guard members reside in 4 counties in the state, 4 or 5 counties. And those 4 or 5 counties are our most populated counties anyway. So this is a benefit that's spread across the state evenly, and it provides to our military families who retire here and live here. We love our active duty brethren, but when it comes to serving the Kansas and living in Kansas, the Kansas Guard is here to stay. With that, I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you. Committee, any questions? Representative Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And so any Army Reserve, federal, they're not included in this, only if you're in the Kansas Guard?
With the way the bill was reworded this year, that was one of the concerns raised in veterans this year, was that they wanted to make sure they took care of the reservists as well. And that's the way I worked with the revisor's office to make sure that we word it the way we did, to include all military that reside in Kansas. So no matter their status, they're able to take advantage of this exemption. That simplifies it not only for the guardsmen and the reservists who are not sure whether they even qualify for this benefit, but it also helps out the state offices or the city and county offices that are implementing this. I know it's a headache every time we try and go in and take advantage of this, because I'm submitting a new set of orders, or in some of my counterparts' case, they're trying to print off orders and submit orders and fill out the forms correctly to make sure they qualify for the benefit. And it's on the county clerks and everybody else that are telling them, no, you don't qualify for this because X, Y, and Z. This bill rectifies that and makes it easier on everybody.
Representative Wassinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to tell you how grateful we are for the Kansas National Guard. You know, don't know whether you're aware of this, but we voted to include the National Guard scholarship along with the governor's recommendation in higher education budget. So I just wanted to say thank you, and this is long overdue, and with such a huge price tag, considering the millions that we spend in this building, I think it's way past time to do it. So thank you for being here, and thank you for bringing it up.
Thank you, ma'am.
Committee, any further questions? Seeing none in the room and none online, thank you for your testimony and your time today.
Thank you.
I do not show any further proponent testimony. Was there anyone else wishing to appear on behalf of House Bill 2313? Seeing none, I also show no opposing or neutral testimony. Is there anyone else who wishes to testify on 2313? Seeing none, we will close the hearing on 2313. And committee, I would ask you turn your attention to House Bill 2239 for the purpose of debate. And while you're getting your folders and your information out, I would turn to the revisor's office for an overview of 2239, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you may recall, House Bill 2239 would extend the corporate net operating loss carry forward provision for losses incurred in tax year 2018 and thereafter. Under the bill, the current 10-year carry forward would be extended to up to 20 years. And with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you. Committee, any questions? Seeing none, what are your wishes with House Bill 2239? Representative Helgerson.
Mr. Chairman, do you want the motion first to pass it out and then an amendment?
Motion first, and then we'll be on discussion. Yes, sir.
Okay. I'd make a motion that we pass out House Bill 2239 favorable.
Is there a second? Second by Representative Potter. Now we are on discussion. Representative Helgerson.
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment. I'll hand it out. In the briefing and the discussion we had, we asked whether or not 20 years was the appropriate. We heard that some states have a infinite time frame, meaning they can take the loss at any time in the future. That's what this amendment does. It also conforms to the federal government, which allows that loss to be taken any time in the future.
We will stand at ease for just a moment while everybody has a chance
Are
to
there enough?
get a copy.
May I ask a question, Mr. Chairman? Which amendment was this again? Just so I'm clear.
The title in the square box is Net Operating Loss Rolling Conformity. Does that properly identify it?
That does, thank you.
Does everyone have a copy of the amendment before them? Representative Stogstill and Alcala, do you have a copy?
Mr. Chairman, I do not, but I understand.
Okay.
I'll be signing it here, so I have one second. Let me send that.
Okay, anyone joining us virtually, or the representative joining us virtually, should be seeing that in their email soon. With that, Representative Helgerson, I would allow further discussion. Do you want to explain the amendment further?
I think it's self-explanatory in that it basically says if you have the loss, you can take it any time in the future.
Committee, any questions? Representative Mason.
Representative Helgerson. Representative Helgerson. I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Helgerson, it doesn't, your language doesn't necessarily say it's unlimited. It only does so by virtue of the fact that we're tying it now to IRC, right?
Correct, but that's the current.
Got it. Thank you.
Representative Kelly.
I'm not sure. I mean, to me, 20 years sounds like a long time. I'm sure if you go that, and it seemed like our testimony over the last several years, it was a kind of an agreement among those that wanted to do it that 20 years was satisfactory. So I can see to conform, but it seemed like 20 years versus infinite is quite a long period, and it seemed like the ones that were the proponents have, over the last several years we've worked on this, agreed that they were happy with 20 years. So just wondering the difference.
Did you want to respond to that, Mr. Representative Helgerson?
So I remember this was changed in '87, and at that time they thought, which I happen to be on the tax committee, I think at the time, they thought 10 years would be sufficient. I'm trying to make it not only conform, but also make sure that they can anticipate it any time in the future. And I realize that 20 years may seem like a long time. Believe me, 20 years seems like a long time in the legislature. You know, time has a way of, balancing it out. And I think I heard from some individuals, some companies, that they would like if they had the chance.
But it did seem, I mean, if my memory serves, that they were okay with the 20. I mean, if we did do infinite, they were okay with the 20, because probably the average length of time you carry a loss forward, probably substantially less than 20 years. So I don't know, it'd probably be used in a limited amount, but thank you.
Committee, I apologize. I had discussed this with Department of Revenue with Kathleen Smith, and she had presented me a fiscal note. Kathleen, if you're still available, would you be willing to address the committee regarding the changes or lack thereof to the fiscal note?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is Kathleen Smith with the Kansas Department of Revenue. If this amendment were to move forward, we are estimating that the 1.86 million that would begin in tax year 2029 or fiscal year 2030 would just continue on for the out years. So it would be a negative 1.86 million from here forever.
Thank you. And Representative Kelly, to your point, I'm not sure necessarily that we needed it past the 20 years, but the idea behind the amendment was to conform and have some rolling conformity with federal code. That way, if federal code ever changed in the future, we wouldn't have to come back, and the businesses would not have to follow two sets of rules regarding the net operating loss.
Okay, thanks. And it just didn't work that too well out that way with the deductions, but so just wondered whether there was a plus, but thanks for the explanation.
Representative Corbett.
Thank you. I think it's kind of a pro-business thing. You might as well give them as much time as they need, and maybe some larger companies will take another look at Kansas and come in and create some jobs and spend some money. It's a lot better to open some of these doors, just keep trying to squeeze them down. So I'd be supporting this amendment.
Committee, any further questions? Representative Mason.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to echo those sentiments. I, too, will be supporting this amendment and the underlying bill.
Representative Sanders.
Mr. Chairman, I recall that when we talked about this originally, there was a list of states that were at 10 years like we are, and I think there were only like 6 states on that list. And then there were several more on 20 years and several more that were like Representative Helgerson is proposing, unlimited. Does anybody readily have those numbers available? How many states are already unlimited and how many states are at 20 years?
It appears Representative Highland might have that readily available.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What I do have is the notes. The question was asked about the surrounding states. Oklahoma has indefinite. Nebraska, Missouri, and Colorado each have 20 years. That was the conversation I heard.
Committee, any further questions? Representative Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So as I revisit testimony, it looks like the difference also was the federal was unlimited, but at 80% of taxable income rather than the full. So I believe the revised wording takes us to be completely consistent with federal. Is that correct? So thank you.
I'd be happy to give that to the reviser, but I believe it makes us conform with the federal.
Adam, do you want to weigh in on that? Does that change the 80%?
I probably, if revenue gains to that, if that's how they'd interpret it, that'd probably be something for them. I probably wouldn't lead to them.
Would Department of Revenue wish to weigh in on that question, please?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. Kathleen Smith with the Department of Revenue. I do believe that we would conform to the 80% limitation. However, right now at the federal level, it is 100%, I believe, for tax years 18, 19, and 20. Beginning with 2021, I believe they are going back to the 80% limitation unless there are some further changes at the federal level.
Yes, go ahead, Representative.
So thank you, Mr. Chairman. So again, to clarify, so this would parallel. So whenever that change happens at federal, it happens for Kansas, just to be clear. Is that correct?
Yes, the role and conformity piece of this legislation would continue to make those changes automatically.
Right. Thank you.
Any further questions? Representative Awerkamp.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Turner, can you clarify what point you're trying to make on that? I think I'm following you as far as the 80%, 100%. Can you just maybe specifically say what's in the best interest of the Kansas businesses? If I may ask that.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't claim to be a tax expert, but the way I understand the language is that they will have an unlimited number of years, but it would be a lesser amount that they could claim because it would be limited to 80% as opposed to 100% for the years that they do claim it, is the way I understand the language. But again, I don't have CPA behind my title, but
Mr. Chairman, would it be possible to get, from the sounds of it, it's in the best interest of Kansas businesses. 20 years is a long time. Going past that's going to be extremely rare. So would it be in the best interest of Kansas businesses to leave the bill as is? They can do the 100% rather than the 80%?
Committee, I will maybe digress a little bit from our traditional method of working on bills, but is there anyone in the gallery that would be a proponent of this bill that would wish to speak to that to make sure we understand exactly the implications of this amendment? Sandy, just introduce yourself and who you represent, please. Thanks.
I am Sandy Braden with Braden, Heidner & Lowe, and I'm here on behalf of T-Mobile. It's my understanding, and I can make a quick call too, that if you have rolling conformative, just like the Department of Revenue mentioned, that it would be either the 80 or 100% indefinite. They're two separate issues, 80, 100% of your loss. And because of the COVID and the CARES Act, they allowed those 3 years to be at 100%. And then as Department of Revenue said, it'd go back down to 80%. And I assume that the amendment would be a rolling conformity with the federal government that would include that as well as indefinite. So kind of two issues.
Representative Avercamp, does that answer your question? Or I would open up questions if anyone has them. Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm definitely not a CPA either, but to me, listening to the discussion, it's rare somebody going past the 20 years, which is in the bill. So it appears that it's better to keep the bill as is and allow people to use 100%.
No, you would, the 80 and 100% is a different rolling conformity issue. And the indefinite is how long you can have your loss. The 80, 100% is how much of that loss you can claim. So I think someone mentioned that it's probably the easiest for rolling conformity for businesses to be able just to follow whatever the federal guidelines are, whether it's 80 or 100 and indefinite, because they're two separate issues. And I think maybe Department of Revenue could, if they wanted to kind of clarify that.
Yeah, and Kathleen, I'd welcome your comments here too, but if I don't want to try to oversimplify this, but basically the underlying bill would also go back to the 80%.
Right. That's my understanding.
The only thing the bill was doing was changing it from a 10-year to a 20-year. We did not adjust anything on the percentage. Is that, Kathleen, is that the way you understand the bill?
I would agree. I believe with the language that we have in there that it's allowed in the same manner that it is allowed under the Federal Internal Revenue Code would make us conform to what the Federal Internal Revenue Code is saying, which would be the 80%, or in this case for these 3 years, the 100%.
Thank you. Committee, while we have Sandy here, is there anyone else that has a question for clarity? Representative Sanders?
Sandy, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do you have any sense of if T-Mobile would be supportive of this amendment?
Yes, we are fine either with the 20 or the indefinite.
Thank you. Thank you, Sandy, for that expertise.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions on the Helgerson amendment? Representative Bergkamp.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wondering, do we need the wording except on box 2 where it says except that such net operating loss deduction may be only carried forward is conforming to the Internal Revenue Code sufficient? So that way, if they change it, where you could carry back or forward at some point in time in the future.
I would turn to the reviser on that. You're talking about line 15?
Yes,
16?
correct.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, that you brought up something that I'd actually spoken with Kathleen earlier today on. That language was left in there intentionally. So essentially, as currently is allowed, it only applies to carry forwards. Carried backs are not provided. So that language only provides for the carried forward of losses under Kansas income tax purposes. So yeah, I mean, carried back losses would be a different aspect that has to be added if intended. But that language is what the revenue sought to have included, just so it applies. It's clear that it only applies for the carry forward of such losses.
I was just thinking like 2 or 3 years from now, if the IRS had changed the code to say you can now carry back, would we then have to readdress that at that point in time? That's just how I'm thinking about it anyway.
Mr. Siebers?
I mean, I guess I might have Kathleen correct me if I'm wrong, but if you want to add carryback losses, that would have to be a new component added to Kansas income tax provision. There currently, I believe, are federal carryback losses. We just don't recognize those in Kansas, is my understanding, at the federal level.
So we are just conforming to the federal federal IRC regarding the carry forward provision.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, committee, any further questions? Seeing none, Representative Helgerson, you may close.
Sorry to confuse everybody, but I think, as I understand, just so it's clearly stated again, this conforms with the federal government, and it keeps us in line with the percentage of loss. The only issue that we're dealing with is whether or not they can continue to take it out indefinitely, or whether they have to take it within the 20-year period. So I'd move the amendment.
Committee, you've heard the motion on the Helgerson amendment. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. We are back on the bill. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, Representative Helgerson, you may close.
I move that the committee pass out House Bill 2239 as amended favorably.
Committee, you've heard the motion by Representative Helgerson to pass 2239 favorably. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Special committee this summer.
Sorry, I had to mute Mr. Jerry there. Okay, committee, that concludes our business for the day. I do want to make you aware, we're going to try this possibly tomorrow. There is a new system being developed to distribute the testimony and the files. It's an S drive on your computers. I did not have that ready. I have a few questions on it myself, but I want to make everybody aware that that will be a much more efficient way of getting the files out to everyone rather than having to send them via email. And I'd like to thank Representative Highland for his idea and kind of spearheading that. So yes. But we plan on kind of explaining and walking you through that so everybody can access their files on their computer easily. It doesn't take the time to go to the website. You will have access to the files. So just wanted to make everyone aware of that. Is there anything else that needs to come before the committee today? If not, we are